本日の司会を務めさせていただきますブリティッシュカウンシルの湯浅と申します。皆様本日はご参加いただきましてありがとうございます。本日はですね、ご案内をしていますように、英国から4名のスピーカーの方を、お招きしています。ただいま英国がちょうど朝の9時になります。朝早くからの皆様ですね、カメラの前に、PC の前に座っていただいています。ちょっと今日の件についてご説明をしたいんですが、ブリティッシュカウンシルでは、2014年、15年頃からそのアートと高齢社会というのをテーマを立ててプログラムを展開しています。その中で多くの日本の芸術関係者の方、そして英国の方々とお仕事、プログラムを推進しています。でこの2015年からですね、英国のアートの関係者の方に、特にその高齢の方、認知症の方との活動をされている方々に来ていただいて、日本の文化芸術関係者、高齢者福祉に関わる方たちとお会いをいただいて、日本の状況を見ていただいたり、そして実践を交換し合ったり、または日本の方に英国に行っていただいて、視察プログラムという形で各地のさまざまな団体を訪れ、実際にプログラムにも参加していただきました。またさらに日本と英国の芸術団体同士のですね、共同プロジェクトをご一緒させていただいて、その中でアーティスト、音楽家向けのトレーニングをしたり、または実際に地域の高齢の方、認知症の方を対象にしたプログラムなども行い、研究者の方との共同などもしてまいりました。で昨年の新型コロナウイルス感染症によって英国も日本もそして全世界的に芸術セクターが大きな影響を受けたわけなんですけれども、特に英国ではロックダウンの期間が非常に長く皆さんニュースでご覧になっていると思いますが続いています。そこで美術館、劇場などが長期間閉鎖をしざるを得ない状態、またはその地域をまたいだ移動ですとか、ああいうことが制限が出た関係で、対面での特にそのコミュニティの方、または感染リスクの高い方が参加するプログラムというのが非常に実質展開が難しくなっています。そうした中で高齢の方の孤立、または心身の健康への影響というものがさらに大きくなっているという社会問題にもなっていまして、同様の状況は日本でも起きているんではないかと思います。日本ではさらに、日本ではですね、美術館、劇場の開館が早めに開いて、冬は早めに開いて芸術活動がスタートしていますけれども、同様にコミュニティプログラム、特にそういったリスクの高い方との共同というのは難しいのではないかと思います。で今日はですね、4名の方に、これまでご一緒にですね、日本でプロジェクトをされた団体の方や、日本に何度も来ていただいた方に特にお声をかけさせていただいて、改めてですね、この期間、どういったご活動をされていたのか、英国はどういう状況かということをお話しいただこうと思います。事前に申し込みの時に質問を受けていますけれども、またこのセッションの途中でですね、ご質問がありましたら、この Zoom の中にですね、Q&A というボックスがあると思います。Q&A のところにですね、ご質問を書いていただきましたら、後半のディスカッションのところで可能な限り取り上げられればと思います。ではですね、最初に順番に皆様にお一人ずつですね、ちょっと短い時間でお願いしたんですけれども、プレゼンテーションをお願いしたいと思います。まず最初にベアリング財団でディレクターを務めていらっしゃるデイビッド・カトラーさんにお願いします。デイビッドさん、日本にもですね、何度もお越しいただいていて、お話もしていただいているので、直接お会いになった方もいらっしゃるかと思いますが、またここ数年、特にこの1年の間でですね、どういったことになっているのか含めてお話をいただきたいと思います。デイビッドさん、よろしくお願いします。
Thank you so much, and I wish I was there in person, but here's my talk for you. What creative aging did in lockdown? Introduction. I'm so grateful for this invitation from the British Council in Tokyo and for their brilliant support in recent years for a number of creative aging exchanges. This has resulted in many partnerships, and I've tried to give a glimpse of the wonderful work happening in Japan in Living National Treasure, Art and Older People in Japan, That's a short report that the British Council will give you a link to. And now to the subject of my short talk. In the UK, there has been a complicated series of lockdowns affecting different parts of the nation. But to generalise for brevity, people living in care homes are only just receiving family members for the first time in a year, and older people who are especially vulnerable through underlying health conditions have spent a similar time shielding, rarely leaving their homes. Through the miracle of the vaccines, all these people have now had one shot of vaccine, if not two. So what did creative ageing do? I tried to describe the magnificent response of arts organisations in the UK in our new publication, Key Workers, Creative Ageing in Lockdown and After. And again, the British Council will give you a link to the publication. This report was mainly based on a small survey of 62 arts organisations and 16 case studies to which I will refer in the talk. The activities described took place last spring and summer. Online overnight. Certainly the biggest effect of lockdown on creative ageing is the degree to which activity has gone online. The main reason for this is obvious. Personal contact, including with artists, stopped immediately. Although digital activity was not the only option, it was used frequently. And what's more, in many cases, this was from a standing start and accomplished in a matter of weeks or less. In our survey, almost 80% of organisations only used face-to-face methods pre-lockdown. 87% of the respondents continued to work after lockdown using some form of remote method. Previously, the use of digital technology was somewhat unusual for creative ageing. In our survey, only 10% used digital methods, with a further 10% using digital and face-to-face before lockdown. The most significant issue here is the, quote, digital divide. I'm panicking because my screen's just gone off. At least until recently, many care homes had a small number of digital devices and poor broadband connections. Care workers also had limited time to help residents with devices and sometimes were uncomfortable or unconfident with this themselves. The situation in the community is far from ideal too. A 2019 study from the Office of National Statistics estimated that just over 1 million adults in the UK, we have a population of just under 70 million, did not use the internet, and half of these were aged 75 or over. It must have been tempting to rush in, given the palpable need to offer something to isolated older people and to care homes. But Leeds Playhouse, and doubtless others, took a more systematic approach and started by auditing which devices were used by its 250 older participants. It then went on to give test sessions to help people become more comfortable with the technology if needed. Arts Alive and Media Active in Shropshire provided digital buddies, volunteers to provide technical support to their participants. A key distinction in terms of online provision is between content that is provided either live or recorded, where the platform is a tool for delivery, such as YouTube, or where there's the possibility of interaction between artists and participants, for instance, with Zoom, as we're doing today. Arts organisations reported using many different methods, such as social media pages, especially Facebook and WhatsApp, and the frequent use of YouTube for performances or for how-to workshops. One commentator called this passive content and felt that it lacked the vital co-production element of good creative aging practice, involving a live event with an artist allowing older people agency in creativity. There are so many aspects to digital technology, and it is in a state of constant development. City Arts was already well ahead with their Armchair Gallery app in Nottingham, which allows virtual tours of heritage sites and galleries combined with creative exercises. They have now gone one stage further in developing an augmented reality version of the Armchair Gallery. Digital delivery cancels distance. Cartrefi in Wales, like many organisations there, has struggled with the north-south travel problems, and they have eliminated this by online delivery. In our survey, slightly more arts organisations said that they had gained participations in lockdown than had not. Non-digital. One almost forgotten method of communication has been the comeback of the use of the postcard. Artist community in Wales observed that a large majority of their participants couldn't use the internet and used the Royal Snail, that's post, for beautifully decorated postcards with messages of love. Celebrating Arts Wiltshire is developing a county-wide scheme. In almost all case studies, regular telephone contact was essential. For instance, Flourishing Lives joined forces with the Claremont Project to resource a telephone befriending service for 850 older people. Even where organisations are using digital groups like the Centre for Chinese Contemporary Art in Manchester with their Dumpling Social Club accessing WhatsApp and Google Hangouts, it was combined with art activity packs through the post. The artist's tale. Artists were faced themselves with the reality and challenges of life in pandemic Britain. They or their families could fall ill or be anxious about the possibility of catching COVID-19. The organisations they worked for could lose contracts and they might have to be furloughed and survive on reduced incomes. In our survey, 91% of organisations have become more concerned about the health and well-being of their artists. In the context of this report, they needed to radically and swiftly adapt the way that they were working with older people. It might not only be older people that lack digital skills. Some artists also might not feel confident using unfamiliar platforms. The flip side of this was that artists learned new ways of working and skills. For instance, how to make films. In our survey, 90% of respondents felt that artists had needed to learn new skills. In general, there was a lot of concentration on reflective practice networks for artists' workshops online and on best practice in working non-digitally. The care home story. Much less of this report's material came from care homes, and many observations need to be much more tentative. It should immediately be acknowledged what a stressful and traumatic experience this period has been for many people working and living in care homes. Most care homes residents live with dementia. This has been a risk factor for worse outcomes when someone is infected with COVID. And it has also been noticed how dementia symptoms have accelerated during lockdown. Care workers were at a heightened risk of falling ill themselves, which would then compound the stretched resources in those homes. They have been putting their own lives on the line to care for their residents and deserve much better support from the government. Only a minority of care homes engage with the sort of professional arts organisations that are cited here. And if they weren't involved before the lockdown, it is highly unlikely that they would have been able to develop new relations in a crisis situation. Secondly, even if they did have a relationship, those care homes with an outbreak of COVID-19 would not have had the capacity to continue to use the arts, and residents would almost certainly be confined to their rooms with everyone taking the most rigorous precautions. More than the arts, one of the most striking things from these case studies has been literally how much more arts organisations are offering to isolated older people in a time of crisis. Dylan Quinn Dance Theatre in Northern Ireland, with funding from the Arts Council, provided digital tablets to some older people to have access to their streamed content. Many have combined telephone befriending with creativity packs or classes. Leeds Playhouse used a systematic approach to contact all their participants, acting as a referral agency if they needed welfare support or of some nature. Food was definitely a theme, with a recipe book from artists and food parcels being delivered by Arts in Mind in Northern Ireland. Conclusion. Key to what has happened was that the participatory or community arts sector in the UK has been developing now for over 50 years. The creative ageing sector is almost as old and has expanded dramatically in the last 10 years. So the arts organisations in the UK responded from a position of relative strength and adapted successfully very rapidly. The economic impact of the pandemic has hit arts organisations especially hard, and there will be a tough battle ahead to reward the great contribution they have made to the most vulnerable during a period of national emergency. They are all looking forward hugely to returning to meeting older people in person, but practice will surely shift and become a hybrid of digital and personal. Without doubt, creative ageing has been a lifeline to many vulnerable people over the last year and needs to be recognised as such. Artists should take their place as key workers alongside doctors, nurses, and care home staff. Thank you very much.
デイビッドさん、ありがとうございました。チャットの方に、ご紹介いただいたレポートの方も書いてあります。すごくいろいろな事例も書いてありますけれども、ぜひ、ご覧いただければと思います。では続きまして、スコティッシュバレーの、ディレクター・オブ・エンゲージメントを務めていらっしゃる、キャサリーさんからプレゼンテーションいただきます。キャサリーさん、お願いします。
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here with you. I'm very grateful to be part of this presentation today and very honoured to have been invited. I'm now going to share my screen and talk you through a presentation. So I'm just going to check with Manami. Can you give me a nod if you can see the presentation now, Manami? Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we did and how we got going during the pandemic. So within 2 weeks of the pandemic hitting the UK, we had set up daily Facebook Live sessions. They were every morning at 10 o'clock. And we worked very closely in a way we've never worked before with Scottish Ballet's digital team. And we were very lucky because they're a highly skilled and experienced team. And they were very passionate as we were, to engage with our dancers from vulnerable communities. So normally we would run weekly classes for people living with dementia, both in care homes and also in Scottish Ballet headquarters. We also run a programme called Dance for Parkinson's, which runs across the whole of Scotland in 9 hubs. And we have Elevate, a new programme, which we launched in 2019 for people living with multiple sclerosis. We also have a big elders programme. We have 6 classes per week for people over 60. So we introduced daily classes free of charge. They were 50 minutes long, and you basically logged on and danced along with the tutor. The reason that we got these up and running so quickly was that we were very concerned about our participants missing out on the benefits of these dance classes. So losing mobility, losing physical capacity, and also not being part of the community that really benefited them. So that was really important for us. We were worried about loneliness. And so the classes were very popular. And what was really exciting for us was that we were able to connect with communities, not just in our normal classes, but also across the whole of Scotland and across the world in the end, which was really exciting and something that we didn't expect. So you can see there we had 655,000 hits overall. And we've also had a very successful programme called Health at Hand that we started within 2 months of the pandemic, which was a programme especially for healthcare workers to help relieve stress, mental stress and physical exhaustion. And also 1,100 attendances for a live webinar called Restore, which is looking at helping support healthcare workers with trauma. So I'm not going to focus too much on that today because we're talking about age. So what we learned, I guess, was really looking at how we could stay connected closely with our participants. We wanted to keep them moving. We wanted to keep them emotionally well as physically well. And we wanted to respond intuitively to what was happening. We really wanted to keep connected to our communities and also engage with new people, which was really exciting. We wanted to empower people in their own homes and give them a little bit of structure because we'd all been thrown into a really unusual situation. And suddenly we were considering the fact that everyone was locked down. How could we help them to connect with families that were far away from them through dance as well? And that was a really exciting side effect of this work because suddenly people were telling us that they were dancing with their granddaughter in London during the Scottish Ballet sessions, or dancing with their sister or friends far away. They would log in together and do the Scottish Ballet session together, which was really wonderful. So that was a benefit that we didn't expect. Our physical response, as we spoke about, was to deliver the classes every day and also to look at, begin to help our healthcare teams across Scotland and the UK to support their wellbeing too. And also through Restore to look at those experiencing trauma and post-traumatic disorders. We decided to move on to Zoom after 4 or 5 months of using the Facebook Live classes because we wanted to create more of a classroom experience. We wanted people to be able to engage with one another, to interact creatively. And also for them to have the opportunity to feel connected to the people that they were missing, that they weren't able to see anymore. And those classes have been hugely popular. They're still growing. And we're having people from all over the world engaging in them, which is really exciting. And lastly, we launched our community adult evening program class. So that's for any adult, and it's a Bali-based program. And what was really exciting about that was because we'd never delivered digital classes before. We have people from all over the world coming to do Bali with us now every evening. Something that was really important for us was that we used our own company dancers, our own professional performers, because sadly, as David mentioned, lots of artists across the UK were not working and our dancers were also at home. So it was wonderful for them to be able to connect with participants from all over in evening classes and to use their skills and to share those skills, and really exciting for the participants to be able to be with them. Our emotional response, we became concerned that people were separated from one another, and so we launched a series of social cafes. So not only could you dance with Scottish Ballet, but you could also pop in, have a cup of tea, have a chat. And we used some of our administration staff to facilitate those chats. And also we welcomed freelancers that we paid to attend. And also we welcomed our own core staff so that people had faces they recognised, and also participants that they knew, and some new participants that had never joined us before. We started a newsletter, which we hadn't had in existence before, just focusing on health and suggesting lovely things like cooking recipes and music that people were enjoying, as well as all the classes and news from Scottish Ballet. Like some of David's programmes, we delivered personal phone calls from dance artists to make sure that people had the resources that they needed in place and the digital education that they needed. So on a small scale, we had staff delivering iPads and different devices to support those who didn't have access, and also to help sit in people's gardens and help to educate them as to how to access some of the classes that they were keen to see. We were worried about staff and carers' well-being, so we also offered social cafes for staff, especially our freelancers who'd lost all their work. We continued to pay them for significant period, where they weren't able to deliver their normal classes. But we also offered them private social cafes so that they could come together as a group on their own and talk about their concerns and their worries. And lastly, something that was really exciting was we began to develop creative projects where we could dance and interact with people on their front doorsteps and in their gardens. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that now. So something that we became aware of after several weeks in lockdown was that the people who were sheltering and who were our older participants with dementia, Parkinson's, and younger ones with multiple sclerosis, they had lost their voice and they weren't able to express themselves the way that we had hoped they would be. So we developed a program called HUD Close, which is a multi-art form program. It uses poetry, which, as you know, poetry is a really great art form for people living with dementia, and also dance and also film. And it was inspired by a film that our chief executive and artistic director created several years ago, where one of our elder dancers in her 70s performed with one of our young company dancers in a duet. And so we shared that piece of Scottish Ballet's repertoire as inspiration for this project. We worked with individuals in Scotland, individuals that we knew, some new individuals from across the world that we didn't know before the project. And we also worked with several care homes, which was really exciting. And that was facilitated by care home staff and people that we had already had a partnership with. I'm going to share a little clip of the film with you now. Manami, please let me know that you're able to hear this film.
It's a short name and plain, but not simple. Named after my aunt, a beacon of light. I'm living with Parkinson's, but I'm still thriving.
Leslie Alice Buchan. Wha gave me the name Leslie? My father, I'm telt, and I kinda think he chose weel. A good Scots name. Dark grey fortress. Aye, besieged and battered mony's a time. And Alice, my Glaswegian mother. She was big Alice and me wee Alice. It's funny, I'm 5'8" and she was 5' yin and a quarter should I mind me.
I'm Libby Sinclair from Stromness in Orkney.
And I'm Elizabeth Thompson from Kirkcote in Orkney.
I'm Peter Brown from Sharpensay in Orkney.
I'm Nelke Brown, living in Sharpensay.
Marion Wilson from Kirkcote in Orkney.
Computer says no one. Grandad used to say.
That was just a little clip of the film Hod Close. It's actually not finally been edited yet, so we're just waiting to add in some more footage from the care homes. But you can see that we used poetry and identity and also asking people to explore their own environments as part of the programme, which was really lovely. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what we did to support people during this time. And much of it David has already spoken about, but we offered to go out and help people with how they access technology. We provided hard copies, so DVDs of classes. We evaluated the programs regularly to hear what was working and what wasn't working. And it became apparent quite quickly that we needed a mixture of pre-recorded classes that people could access in their own time. But also the live events were the most popular because people really wanted that sense of being together. Something that's really important to say is that we shared our practice. We looked closely at other models of how people were delivering digitally across the world, particularly Mark Morris Dance Group in America. We worked closely with them, specifically around the Parkinson's programme. We also brought in a specialist in child and vulnerable adult safeguarding, and we trained all of our staff in how to deliver workshops safely and talks safely. Something that was really exciting was that we began to scope out the possibilities of us delivering training for those in foreign countries. And we've begun to work quite closely with the British Council in China to deliver some dementia training for local Chinese dance artists remotely. So we'll be delivering it from the UK whilst they're based in China. So I think it's 3 or 4 dance artists plus a musician that we're hoping to train so that they can start to deliver some dementia-friendly work in care homes, which is really exciting and something we would never have thought about. So my last slide here, looking ahead, just thinking about how we prioritise diversity and inclusivity. As you'll know, the world movement of Black Lives Matter and looking at how we really engage with our communities who face barriers in Scotland as well as internationally is something that's a huge priority for us. And we're working very closely with specialist agencies to increase access across all of our programmes and also to increase the representation of ethnic staff practitioners within our company and within our dance company. We've begun working with British Council China, and this will be our pilot starting in the next couple of weeks to see how we can manage to train colleagues internationally remotely. We're going to be delivering a health conference within the next couple of years. We hope it will be in 2020. 2022, dependent on how the pandemic settles. And also we're moving to deliver a blended approach to all of our work. So we will always have digital offerings, and we hope to begin in the autumn to bring our more vulnerable participants into small classes, but that is going to be quite tricky to kind of begin to develop that work. We now can work at any time of the day digitally, which is really exciting, and we don't necessarily need a dance studio to deliver a dance class, so that's really wonderful as well. It's important that we keep this dexterity and we work closely with our emerging partnerships, and that we build on everything we've learned during this very difficult and sometimes upsetting period for all of us. But it has actually shown lots of exciting potential for the world ahead. Thank you, and I look forward to having any questions from you all at the end.
キャサリンさんありがとうございました。では続きまして、マンチェスターカメラータで、カメラータインザコミュニティの、リーダーをしていらっしゃるリジー・ホスキンさんからプレゼンテーションお願いします。リジーさんお願いします。
こんにちは。私の名前はリジーです。I am from Manchester Camerata, which is a small, well, it's an ensemble based in Manchester in the north of England. I am head of their community programme, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to talk about our pandemic projects for elders and carers. First up, Music in Mind. This is our pre-pandemic project. Before the pandemic, this has been going on since 2012. It's a pioneering music therapy-based programme for people living with dementia and their carers in care homes. So far, it's reached over 6,000 people living with dementia. The methodology uses group-based musical improvisation to encourage people living with dementia to express themselves and communicate with others all through music. It's delivered by our orchestra's specialist team of musicians and music therapists, and we develop Music in Mind through research in partnership with the University of Manchester. The pandemic happened, so we wanted to reach out to the carers and the people with dementia who we were working with. So Music in Mind Remote began. It's training for care professionals. It's an online music therapy based training program for care professionals who work with people who live with dementia in care homes. It's delivered by the same team of Manchester Camerata specialist musicians and music therapists, and we were lucky to get the funding from this from the UK government, Innovate UK, which is a grant given to digital innovation. I should mention we are a charity, so I have to fundraise for everything that we do. So very lucky to have the funding for this. So this is what happens during Music in Mind Remote. It is all online because we can't access care homes, and it's just for care workers. Every week they have a group training session. So a community of care workers come together online with our musicians and therapists. There are music activities, warm-up games. We tell them how to use our online resource. We tell them about the foundations of Music in Mind methodology, and there are also instruction videos, specially filmed during the pandemic. The care workers also receive one-to-one training sessions, so they are able to prescribe special songs, resources from the website for individuals living with dementia in care homes. It has also become a safe space for the care workers to be able to share their experiences in the care homes. A lot of them are very traumatized, understandably, by what's gone on. So this has become a very vital thing for them to have. We've also we've designed and created a comprehensive online resource which sits on the Manchester Camerata website. It has downloadable music therapy tracks, which care workers can just access on their phone and use throughout the home, pieces of music, watch instruction videos. There's also a group forum for sharing questions and generally chatting, helping them to support each other through music. We also provided the homes and the carers with instrument packs, so simple instruments you can see in the picture there, and also iPads. In the top right, there's some screen grabs of what the website looks like. I'm going to share, later on I will can give guided tours of this website. There will be information at the end of this speech. So during the pandemic, so that is has been since last October, we have now trained 15 carers who are delivering Music in Mind workshops for people with dementia while we can't access the care homes. So they're fully trained in delivering our work. Nearly 400 residents have continued to receive the benefits of Music in Mind through these newly trained carers. These benefits are increased social interaction with other residents, increased activity levels outside the Music in Mind sessions, a greater sense of well-being, and increased musical interaction and the confidence to express themselves through music. So the future of Music in Mind, we were lucky enough to feature in a national newspaper about this pandemic project. I can share the link later as well. So as lockdown starts to ease and restrictions begin to relax, we will return to a blend of online and in-person Music in Mind training and workshops at our new base in a monastery in central Manchester. We're also working with Taiwan and Japan Century Symphony Orchestra, Hello Takuma, to develop this online training internationally, which is very exciting. So just to finish this section, Music in Mind for this carer has been an amazing journey for our residents and me, and has given us all the confidence to trust the music and enjoy it. So that is from a carer who has just completed Music in Mind training. Second bit we've been doing for older residents of a town in Withernsea, and we've also made a DVD for care homes also in Withernsea called Unlocked Voices. For the past 5 years, we've helped older and younger residents of Withernsea, which is a very small, quite isolated English seaside town, to make music. Intergenerational work between schools, care homes, and a ladies' choir. When the pandemic happened, obviously we couldn't go to Withernsea. It's across the other side of the country, 200 miles away. So we wanted to keep in contact with the elders and the care homes in that area. This was to help reduce social isolation, to support the residents' well-being, to stay connected to them and continue our ongoing musical relationships with the Withernsea people, and continue to deliver the benefits that music making brought to their town. So we had between 20 and 25 participants who all took part in an online rehearsal twice a month to write their very own song. Each rehearsal had 2 Camerata musicians, a composer, a yoga teacher, a guest musician and soloist. And every session had a warm-up, sing-along, a songwriting session, mindfulness and breathing exercises, a kitchen samba, which I highly recommend, gentle seated music and movement, but using pots and pans and kitchen utensils, rice shakers. And then afterwards, to calm everyone down, a solo performance with a guest introduction speech by one of our lead Camerata soloists. This choir song was then recorded individually over Zoom by the choir and then orchestrated by our composer. A group of 14 of our musicians met at Stoller Hall and recorded their song, which was then made into a film and was premiered on Facebook. It's over 20 minutes long. We will share the link, the YouTube link to the film at the end. You can hear what the choir made. It's really beautiful. It's very English. These films were also made into a special DVD containing music and movement and mindfulness films for 8 care homes in Withensea, while our musicians were unable to visit in person. And here, hopefully, is a short trailer which just shows the content of the DVD that we gave to the care homes.
My name is Lynn. I'm from Manchester Camerata, and I've been coming over to Withensea for the last 4 years, and we've had some fantastic music making. At the moment, we're not able to come over, so instead what we've made is a fantastic music DVD for you, and I'm sure you're going to love it. It's nice to see you today. It's nice to see you today.
So with Unlock Voices, since the rehearsals started in October last year, we've helped to reach 30 elders and helped them stay connected and also make new friends. We've helped them write, record and film their own song. Their Withensea anthem was broadcast on local radio. The video has had over 2.6 thousand views on Facebook since its premiere in December, which is really good. The town of Withensea has 5,000 people, so it's good to have that number of views. And the DVD was sent out in February, and it's reached 8 care homes and has provided ongoing activities for over 100 residents. I'm just going to finish with a quote that one of the choir members said about the experience of being in a choir. One of the lines in the song was about breaking through, and I think it did. The choir broke through the loneliness, didn't it? And for me, that sums up why we do these music projects. Arigato, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.
はい、リジーさんありがとうございます。前にです、お話でもあった日本でも一緒にプロジェクトをさせていただいていたんですけれども、この1年の間でですね、素晴らしい活動をされていたのを、お話を伺えてとても良かったです。それではですね、続いて、エンテレキュアーツのディレクターである、マディ・ミルズさんからお話をいただきたいと思います。マディさんよろしくお願いします。
Hello everyone, it's wonderful to be here and thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this wonderful session. I'm going to share my screen with you now. Here we go. So I'm from Enteleki Arts. We are an arts charity based in Southeast London in the borough of Lewisham. It's a very vibrant and diverse part of London. Next year, we will be hosting London Borough of Culture. It's also a very deprived part of London. It's 7th most deprived borough in London. And we have a huge population of older people. 1 of 4 are currently living in deprivation. And our work has always existed to support that community among other communities. So I'm going to talk you through some of our programs that we created in response to the pandemic. And I'll start with this quote from one of our members, which goes as follows. Look on the bright side. One day we'll all meet up again, and we'll have a nice chatter and a good cup of tea, and we've all managed and coped. It's like a flower closing up, and it'll open up. And I wish you well and take care. So the programme we created, we run in conjunction with the Albany Theatre, which is a local, a brilliant local arts centre. So our programme principles for our remote programme was first of all to identify the support networks around our members. What friends and family did they have around them? Who did they live with? We did a lot of phone calls to understand the situation that everybody would be in. Secondly, their access to technology. As David spoke about, digital deprivation is a real challenge. And so we actually ended up producing most of our programs by telephone because a lot of our communities did not have access to Wi-Fi and or computers. And I'll talk a bit more about how we did that. The next principle, incredibly important, was that the program was with our communities. It wasn't just for our communities. They were involved with the designing and the production of it. Every 6 weeks, we held meetings with them to talk about practical things. Do we need to change the times of the sessions? Do we need to change the format? Also, curatorial decisions. Do we need to, what sort of things would you like to be talking about? What are the issues that you're currently experiencing that you'd like us to be bringing into the content of the sessions we're running? Our programs were designed to enable agency at a time where people were literally told to stay inside and cut off contact. That voice, as colleagues have reflected, really was very hard for a lot of people. We also wanted to keep people's confidence and build people's confidence during such a challenging time. And then the critical joy and the connection of our artistic programs was essential. The program, we also strengthened our relationships with other local partners. So people that were working with the same participants and members of the community, but had different responsibilities. For example, the health centres or the food banks. The first element of our programme we created was our creative cluster groups. These were all run by telephone. So every week we bring together 9 groups of people with between 4 and 8 people in each group. And they have a different focus for that session. So we have a choir group, we have a poetry, we have a making craft group, we have a film and movies group, a radio production group, and others. These are led by artists and volunteers, and they're incredibly well attended, and we had to extend and increase our capacity to respond to the demand. Through the pandemic, we increased our number of participants quite dramatically through a social prescribing model that we adopted. This programme is a staple in people's weeks. It gives them something to look forward to, a moment to connect with their friends. Some of our members get dressed up for the occasion. One gentleman puts on a suit, even though it's by telephone. We know that these creative telephone clusters are incredibly important to our groups. And in the 9 months between April and December last year, we delivered 532 of these creative cluster groups, and they are continuing to happen as we speak. Meet Me on the Radio, which was we created with the Albany again. It's a new radio show that happens weekly, and it's curated and hosted by our members. It's a 30-minute radio show that you can listen to on demand. And the contents, again, it's entirely created by our members and our community. We've had features about cookery. You can cook along with one of our hosts. We have meditation, we have song selections, we have guest speakers, we have gardening tips, the possibilities are endless, and the radio, again, it's been born out of the pandemic, but it will continue in hopefully at least the next 6 to 12 months. We've had approximately 15,000 listeners to the radio since it started. It's been a fantastic opportunity for us to reach more people, and we know care homes and kind of households have had it on for lots of people to listen to at once. It's increased the confidence and leadership opportunities of the members who have been involved with creating the radio as well. We created care packages. We've done 2 different care packages so far. The first one was called Gnomes at Home, and you might be able to see the gnomes in this picture. So we sent out each of the boxes you can see in this picture. There was 250 in total, and they were sent out to isolated older people with a blank gnome, some paints, and a small plant. And the idea was that participants could create their own little garden at home in their windowsill. And people have become very attached to their gnomes. Sometimes they've painted them with their family. Sometimes if they live alone, it's become a sort of symbol of companionship for them. The second care package we have created is called Rhythms of the Day. And this was created particularly for those living with dementia, those who are non-verbal, and those living with complex disabilities. And it's for communities who didn't engage well with painting and the kind of the original care package we sent out. And this is a Rhythms of the Day box is based around sound and vibration and sensory experience in the home. And that is being sent out in the next 2 weeks to 50 people. We have a fantastic elders theatre group. This picture is not from the pandemic. It's from a production they created a few years ago called Bed. But we have a group of really creative older people, and I would describe them as activists as well. They create work which comments on issues and storytelling, which is designed to make change. During the pandemic, the group have continued to meet on the phone, and they have written 2 new plays. The first is going to be recorded on Zoom again in the next few weeks, and the second is a radio play, and both of them are inspired by the pandemic, but set in different time zones. We've done befriending, like many people. So with our relationships with care homes and with people living independently, we have been doing letter writing and phone calls and doorstep hellos where it's been possible, and delivering birthday cards to people when it's been their birthdays. Those sort of small moments of connection have been really important. And that's again been led by our volunteers and artists. And in the 9 months between April and December last year, we delivered we made over 1,000 phone calls. Creativity calls, again, when we created our group cluster sessions, we recognised that there were some people for whom meeting as a group did not suit them, and they would appreciate a one-on-one experience. And this was often people who were living with dementia. And so we created one-on-one creative phone calls where a musician will ring the person and will play music or sing with them down the phone. And again, between April and December last year, we did 476 of those calls. Deliveries and post. We've done a lot of, as people have talked about, those connections. We've sent out postcards, song lyrics, Christmas parcels with locally made chutney and jam, and just things to keep connected with people. When it was possible to do social distanced visits, we did creative doorstep performances. And in this picture, you can see one of our local artists, Christopher Green, in his character as Ida Barr. And he visited over 35 people from a distance and did a creative performance for them and a song, which was so joyful and wonderful. So the big little meetings we have every 6 weeks, as I mentioned, we bring our groups together on the phone to talk to them. We want to understand how people are. Also, like I say, we make changes to our programs, but practical and curatorially based on their feedback. And they're a really critical part of our engagement. So for us, before the pandemic, we were already exploring ways of reaching our communities who are housebound or who, particularly during the winter months, would struggle to engage with our in-person activities. The pandemic has required us to accelerate that work, and we are now looking at ways of continuing to, in addition to returning to in-person activities, to also try and embed an ongoing remote program, which is focused around the principles that we've talked about. We know that the impact of our program has brought people connection and joy. It's given people things regularly to look forward to, and also a sense of escapism and relaxation in their day. That's the end of my presentation. I, at the end, welcome any questions. Thank you so much.
はい、ありがとうございます。残りだいたい25分ぐらいなんですけれども、ちょっとここでですね、スピーカーの皆様と、少しお話をしながら、皆様からのご質問にも、時間が許す限りお答えしたいと思いますので、ご質問がある方は、Q&A のボックスの方に、ポストしていただければと思います。最初のデイビッドさんのですね、プレゼンテーションの中で、デイビッドさんはカメラがつきますかね。お顔が見えるといいですが。
はい。
Thank you. 最初にデイビッドさんのプレゼンテーションの一番最後のところで、この、パンデミックの中で、様々な困難があった中でも、そのクリエイティブエイジング、こういった、その高齢者の方にを対象にしたためのですね、クリエイティブな活動というのが、その多くの人のライフラインだったっていう言葉があったと思うんですね。で、今、その3つの団体の方々のいろんな事例があったと思うんですけれども、おそらくそのコロナの中で、特に英国はもう1日外出できる数まで決まっているようなですね、とても厳しいロックダウンの中で、その、時間、またそのプログラム、その体験というものが本当にそのライフラインだったというのはとてもなんかお話から伝わってきたなというふうに思いました。で、またちょっと面白い、とても関心があってお聞きしたのは、デイビッドさんのお話の中で、特にそのアート団体、アーティストとても厳しい、経済的にもとても厳しい状態で、それぞれの団体が経営自体を維持できるかという状態なんですけれども、その中で非常に多くの団体がその孤立をする高齢の方に向けたプログラム、活動というものを非常に多くしてたというのは、とても関心を持ってお話を伺いました。で、今お話の中でそのコロナの影響というのが、高齢者の方や認知症の方のその孤立だけではなくて、様々な面での影響があるに加えて、そのケア施設、日本でも言われてますよね、医療関係者が非常に困難な状況であると。そういった中で、特にいくつかのプログラムについては、アート団体との、オンラインでつなぐときにおいては、連携があるんだと思いますが、カメラアーターの、プログラムのように、その実際にケアスタッフの、トレーニングをしていくことによって、 、それをリモートでですね、していくことっていうのは、すごく意味があるなというふうにも思ってお話を伺いました。で、おそらくその多くのプログラムがですね、の中で具体的な数字で 80% の芸術団体がフェイストゥフェイスでしかプログラムをそのまではしていなかった。それが一瞬にしてできなくなった時に直面する課題がすごく大きくある中で、すごいスピードでデジタルその他に切り替えていった中で、やっぱりそのデジタルデバイドの課題っていうのがやっぱりすごく多いんだと思うんで、それ日本でも全く同じ状態だと思うんですけれども、高齢の方のデジタルの使うスキルの経験のなさ、またはそのブロードバンド施設のブロードバンドのコネクションとか、そもそもの機器がないという中で、今お話の中で、電話を使ったりとか、ラジオだったりとか、またはそのライブだけではなくてレコーディングを事前に録画したダンスの映像を作ったりとか、さまざまなあり方があったなと思うんですけれども、事前のご質問の中でもその課題の中でですね、特にそのオンラインでしかできない時間の中で特にどういったところが非常に課題であったか、そしてどういう工夫をされたかっていうご質問がいくつか来てまして、すでにご説明もいただいたんですけれども、特にこういったところを工夫されたとかいうことがもしあればどなたか、またはもしかしたらそれは必ずしも Zoom ではないソリューションなのかもしれませんけれども、どなたか、教えていただければと思いますが、いかがでしょうか、スピーカーの方。
Thank you. Manami, I think in a way, it's probably better that my colleagues who are running arts programs talk from their personal experience. I think your summary of my presentation was absolutely perfect.
じゃあ、キャサリンさんどうぞ。
I'm happy to speak first. The hardest thing from our perspective, well, firstly, we had to make sure that people were safe, and we often asked them to use a chair from their kitchen or their dining room to support them while they danced, whether they sat on the chair, just making sure people were safe. That was a big concern. But just trying to find a platform that older people can access and feel confident with was a challenge, and bringing people on to feel confident if they didn't have a younger adult in the household to support them and help them. That was a big concern, and I'm not sure that any of us totally addressed that for the very, very vulnerable that are on their own. So yeah, it's hard.
ありがとうございます。リジーさんかマディさんいかがですか。じゃあリジーさんどうぞ。
Sure. The problem we found with the online choir was similar to those in Japan. They were older, they didn't know how to use Zoom, the technology wasn't great, the internet in that part of England is really bad. So we built in an extra 20 minutes before the online rehearsal to give technical support, help people set up their computer, put in headsets, work out how to view the screen. So it was very individual. It would be very difficult to do that for, say, 100 people, but because the choir is a bit smaller, 25 people, we offered that technical inbuilt advice shop, if you like, beforehand.
ありがとうございます。マディさん。
I was just going to quickly add, we did most of our programs on the telephone, and similarly, the technical support and resource needed to host the call and then to individually call the members. And then we had to have a member of staff who was essentially responsible for calling people back when they dropped out for any reason or accidentally hung up. Or so for us, there was a lot of technical challenges even working on the telephone, but for us it was the most accessible method to reach the members that we work with.
ありがとうございます。お話を聞いていると、3つの芸術団体の、皆さんは、コロナになる前から、何年にもわたって、その、地域の、高齢の方とか、その認知症の方々と、関係を作っていらっしゃって、そして、その積み上げた、例えばケア関係者との、関係というものもある中での、そこで突然、コロナになってロックダウンで、全くの接触ができないときに、その新たに関係をつなぎ続けていくっていうことと、ということが非常にすぐにできたということは一つあるのかなというふうに思いました。で、マディさんのお話の中で、こういった、もともとそのコロナ関係なくですね、最後の方でその、with community という言葉を使われて、for community ではない、そのコミュニティの方に与えるのではなくて、一緒に考えて、声を聞きながら、そして一緒に作っていくっていうお話があったと思うんですね。で、おそらくスコティッシュバレエも、マンチェスターカメラータも、同じようにですね、対話をしながら、そして、フレキシブルに、そして様子を見ながらやっていたのかなと思うんですけれども、そのマディさんにお聞きしたいのは、その地域、私も伺いましたけれども、非常に一人で住んでいらっしゃる高齢の方も非常に多くて、悲しみを抱えた方も多い地域だったなというふうに思うんですが、そこでそのコロナになってロックダウンになったところで、どういうふうに関係をつないでいて、そして声を入れ、おそらくそのクロスタープログラム、いろんなプログラムを挙げてたと思うんですが、特になんか注意されたこととか、こういうふうにやったんだよということがあるでしょうか。
Yes, so in the area we work, approximately 2 in 5 older people live alone, which is a large amount of people. We were very mindful of people's well-being, and our role as an arts organisation became more responsible for people's for understanding their kind of wider circumstances and being able to refer them to other services in the area that they may need help with. We employed specifically during the pandemic an access and relationship manager, and her job is dedicated to looking after the individual needs and of those people. So, for example, she would make sure that if somebody was struggling with an art class, she would order a pencil gripper for them to make sure they could pick it up better. She would advise them the best type of speakerphone to get to access our programs. So that level of care and individual relationship was absolutely critical. And the bonds and the relationships between our volunteers and staff teams and our members is very strong. Obviously, with that, there's all sorts of safeguarding and sort of responsibilities and questions that we've been dealing with in parallel.
ありがとうございます。そうですね。で、あとは、ちょっと私もですね、別な、その高齢者の方を対象にしたプログラムではないんですけれども、英国で、ホームレス状態、路上にいる方のサポートのためにですね、アートを使った活動をしている方ともお話ししたことがあるんですが、その方もおっしゃった、多分デイビッドさんのお話にもあったことと全く同じなんですが、そのコロナによって、その孤立や路上の問題、さまざまな問題が、社会的な課題が多くなったときに、そこにおけるこのアートの、力というか、アートが果たせることということの、認識が高まったというふうにその方はおっしゃったんですね。で、デイビッドさんのお話の中でも、そういった活動が非常に多くなっているということもあったと思います。で、ちょっと事前のご質問にもですね、 一つ、質問いただいた方からおっしゃってたのは、日本だとその孤立というのは、個人の問題ではないかということで、片付けられていたこともありますが、それが社会的な課題であるというふうに認識される中にはどういうふうな経過があったんですかということと、合わせてそこの中でそのアートというもの、文化芸術が果たせる役割というものの認識がおそらく英国の中では、先ほどデイビスさんから50年近くのですね、経験があるということもありましたが、高まっていたということだと思うんですけれども、特にそのコロナで、経済的にもその社会的にも社会全体が大きな課題を抱えて、緊急的な支援をしなきゃいけないエリアが多い中で、ことそのアートがこういうアートに寄せる期待というものがどういうふうにその社会、英国の中に認識をされているのか、なぜアートができているのか、アートに対する期待というものがどういうふうに認識されているのかということについて、お話を伺えればなと思うんですけれども、デイビッドさん、何かコメントをしていただくことはできるでしょうか。
Yes, thank you, Manami. I think that's a really, really good point. For millions of people in the UK, I don't know the statistic, perhaps a majority of people, certainly middle class people like myself, office workers, we've suddenly all been working from home with very, very constrained, very, very little social contact, leading very different lives. And I think it's led to a huge appreciation of the value of both creativity and also access to culture, because for many, many people, it's become more important in our personal lives. So I do think we have programs like Grayson Perry's Art Club in the UK. He's a very famous artist in the UK, Turner Prize winner. And every week he brings together lots and lots of examples of non-professionals' art. And I think it's just an example that in my view, there has been a really deep appreciation, a very broad appreciation of the importance of creativity. And on your isolation point, again, many of us are feeling much, much more isolated than we ever have before. And therefore, there's a greater appreciation of isolation in society, which had already been a theme for government and arts organizations before then. Thanks, Manami.
ありがとうございます。他に英国の3人の方で何かコメントしたい方がいらっしゃいますか。じゃあ、キャサリンさんお願いします。
Hi there. Just a thought around the fact that art can be shared even though you're not in the same city or the same household at all. We released a new ballet a new film, a feature film. We'd never made a feature film before as a ballet company at Christmas time. So obviously during that festival period for us, it was hugely successful because people were able to watch it together and experience it together, and I think that's been one of the wonderful things about art during this period, is that people can be connected through it. And that's been really successful for us. And we have had lots of requests for more, so that people can share together.
ありがとうございます。あとは先ほど映像で、見せていただいた写真も見せていただきましたけれども、やっぱり何よりも多分マンチェスターカメラータもそうですね、それぞれお家にいて、ダンスにしろ音楽にしろ、または違ったアクティビティを、一人一人どうしてもオンラインだと1対1になってしまうわけだけれども、そのオンラインを使うからこそ、また逆にそれがそのアーティストとオンライン上で共同した形で、またそれがアーカイブの映像として見れたり、写真として見れるということで、やっぱりアート このすごく厳しい時の中で、すごくこうセレブレーションというか、みんなでこう楽しめるつながりを感じられるっていうすごく力はあるのかなっていうふうに先ほど映像を、などを見せていただいていて、思いました。時間があまり残りないですが、ご質問が来ておりまして、おそらくお二人2つ今質問があるんですが、ちょっと似てるところもあるかなと思いますが、まずお一人の方はですね、お家でできる、感覚に働きかける活動というのはどういうのがありますかということでした。またはその個人とか小グループの方々が、リモートで、できるプログラムで、これはとても良かったんじゃないか、成功したよっていうものがあれば教えていただきたいということですが、すでにプレゼンテーションでもお話はいただいたと思いますが、何かこういったことはとても良かったという例などがありましたら、どなたかシェアをしていただけるでしょうか。じゃあマディさんお願いします。
Yeah, so a program we didn't talk about in this because it's not specific to our older communities, but we run a program called Ambient Jam, which is for people living with complex disabilities. And before the pandemic, it was a very sensory, non-verbal improvisation, creative space to create performance together. And when we do it, we do that on Zoom, actually, because our members have access. But we've really been testing the boundaries with how you make Zoom sensory. And so smells and tastes and textures and the use of props and soundscapes. We sent out sonic postcards to all those members earlier in lockdown, which were postcards but sonic, as they sound, they are. And so that's a whole body of work that we've been developing. It is a real challenge because obviously when you're digital, there is a real barrier with opening up all your senses. But we've been exploring that, and I'm happy to, I know we're running out of time, but I'm happy to follow up with a link about our Ambient Jam program if it's of interest to people.
ありがとうございます。もう一つですね、ちょっと簡単にお答えいただければと思うんですが、そのコミュニティに関する概念、もしかしてそれは特にオンラインを使うからかということだと思うんですけれども、どのように、多分変わってきているのではないでしょうかということですかね。そのオンラインを使うことによって、今まで関係を作ってきた、近いそうですね、関係者の方、関係を作ってきた対象者の方だけではなくて、さらにより広い人たちにもつながることができる。さらには、その国を越えて、国境を越えて、そのプログラムを提供することができるんだと思うんですけれども、できるんではないかと。そういった中で、ローカルな自分たちの身近の参加者の方、さらにはより広い、もしかしたら国を越えるぐらい広い参加者の方とのプログラムということの可能性とバランスについてどういうふうにお考えですかというご質問を英語で書いていただきます。英語の質問は皆さんに今チャットでもお送りしましたので、スピーカーの方は英語をそのまま読んでいただけていると思います。どなたか、はい、じゃあキャサリンさんお願いします。
For us, we were really excited and surprised to see people joining our classes from all over. And I think when we then moved from an open platform like Facebook and moved to Zoom for classes, we retained a lot of the people who had joined us. And my feeling is that when you're using Zoom, that everyone is equal, and so it doesn't matter where you are in the world, and you feel that sense of community. And our job as artists is to make everyone feel safe and that their creativity is equally valued. And what's exciting for all of us is the opportunity to begin to deliver classes in different languages and to consider different cultural requirements and different cultural needs to really enrich our program. So I think it's really exciting, and I think in 10 years' time, we're going to be in such an amazing place in terms of inclusion and communication across the world because of these opportunities. I think we're just starting.
ありがとうございます。じゃあリチーさんお願いします。
Yeah, we are just about to start our training of NSO musicians in Taiwan. So we're training the musicians in how to do music in mind, music therapy, which is really exciting because music that we do in the sessions, it's improvisation. So the common language is music. So it will be really interesting to learn how to train people without a shared language in the methodology and to see the results. We were supposed to be going to Taiwan in June, but again, I don't think that's going to happen. But online has meant that we can give the musicians a head start, so they get a bit of background before we finally, when we're out of lockdown, can make it to Taiwan. So it's really good, and they will be able to go to see their elders once they've been trained to try the methodology, to use the MP3s and the soundscapes that we've designed and the videos. So yeah, it's really exciting.
ありがとうございます。マディさんはどうでしょう。
Yeah, I was just going to add, there's, in terms of the connectivity opportunities, there's a UK Elders Theatre network that exists, and about last month we brought together all those members from across the UK with the organisations and also the participants together in one big Zoom, and it was fantastic, and everybody had 10 minutes to share what they'd been up to during lockdown, and then afterwards there were creative sessions that people could participate in, and it was attended by about 60 people from across the UK, and that was amazing, having a workshop with somebody from South London to rural Wales to, you know, so it was amazing, and I think there are really great opportunities in terms of expanding communities and reach, and sharing stories and making new friends. I think it's a great opportunity.
ありがとうございます。今このオンラインの可能性みたいなところ、特にその国を越えたり、その新しいそうですね、つながりのあり方とかコミュニケーションのあり方、またはそのストーリーの交換のあり方みたいなお話だったと思うんですけれども、私たちもですね、やっぱりこの渡航制限のある中で英国から皆様を、英国の方に来ていただくこともできない、日本の方に行っていただくこともできない中で、今日のようにこうしたZoomを使ったディスカッションを本当にここのところすごく多くさせてやっているんですけれども、こうしたテクノロジーを使うことによって、またその、こういう時だからこその、国を越えた、経験の交換ということができるといいなというふうに思ってます。で、今回はですね、時間がオンラインなのであんまり長く2時間3時間のセッションは皆さん疲れてしまうだろうと思って、まずは第1回目としてですね、英国の方にお話をいただきました。日本でも様々な取り組みも皆さん工夫をされていると思いますし、または本当はこの去年1年の中で日本のアーティストの方、英国のアート団体の方がコラボレーションをしていく計画がいくつもあったんですね。これまでの関係をつなげる中で、それができなくなってしまったことでオンラインによって対話を重ねていらっしゃるチームもあったり、いろいろ行われています。デイビッドさんはですね、非常にいろいろなその世界の各国の国の方々とのその関係を紡いだり、またはその経験を共有されるために大きなレポートも出されたりもしていますけれども、こうしたそのオンラインをつないだですね、使ったですね、オンラインを使わなくてもいいんですが、国際的に共有していくことに対する期待などをですね、あとこれからまだまだコロナで大変な時期が続きますけれども、コロナから先に向けて、今だからこの関係働く私たち全員がですね、できることについて、ちょっと最後にまとめのようにですね、一言いただけたら嬉しいなと思いますが、お願いできるでしょうか。
Thank you very much, Manami. And I wanted to say that on this issue of communities, the British Council has absolutely been leading the way about international communities and the importance of dialogue between different nations at different levels, whether it's professionally or at the population level. And I've learned about a number of examples that you've been supporting today, which I wasn't aware of. So I think there's huge credit to what the British Council's been doing. I have an invitation that we held a conference at the beginning of the year, which was organized by colleagues in Helsinki, which was an international exchange on creative aging. And the City of Manchester's kindly agreed to hold another of these international seminars in the early part of next year. So it feels a little way off at the moment. And of course, we can continue to have more informal exchanges before then, but I very much hope that we'll have an opportunity to gather again then with colleagues in Manchester. Thank you.
ありがとうございます。とても嬉しいお言葉をいただいてありがとうございます。ぜひですね、この、今日時間が少し過ぎてしまって大変申し訳ありませんが、今回をまたきっかけにですね、次回、またその次というふうに、こうした会を持っていきたいなというふうに思っております。また次はですね、また日本の方にもご紹介をいただいたり、そしてもう少しみんなで少しそうですね、グループチャットでお話ができるようなこう機能も使いながらできるといいかなというふうに思っておりますので、またご案内が皆様にできればと思います。今日英国から参加してくださったスピーカーの皆様、本当に朝早くから長い時間ありがとうございました。本当にお会いできなくて、フェイストゥフェイスでですね、お会いできなくて残念ですが、久しぶりにお顔を見れてとても嬉しかったです。ありがとうございます。また皆様の活動についてはですね、オンラインでもまた追ってフォローしていきたいなというふうに思います。また日本からご参加の皆様、長い時間ありがとうございました。